With the most representation in VCT EMEA this year at 30% of the player base, East is the mineshaft from which new gems are uncovered. Combined with the home to some of the most decorated players in international Valorant, North is the perfect partner for their success. This new superpower is now preparing to send 4 teams to its first regional tournament of the year. As we enter a new chapter in the history of the second tier, I'll be giving a quick rundown on all of the teams competing in the first stage of Challengers Northeast. Before we get started, a quick disclaimer: half of the teams here still haven't played officials, so roles aren't an exact science. If you know any more about these teams, feel free to let me know in the comments and leave a like to support the channel as well. Without any further ado, let's dive straight in. Now, it wouldn't be North or East without an unsigned super squad, and Deti Ulice are a prime candidate for this year. Kaya leads this group of players which have combined experience from multiple Challenger Leagues in previous years. Nunmeister and Wanzeru were both new players themselves to East when they joined Bait at the beginning of last year, but enjoyed a fairly comfortable campaign which finished them mid-table. Coming from such a competitive and vast league into the murky blend of talent as Northeast figures itself out meant that they had an instant edge, showing serious flair in the lower Swiss stage. Gunners is a rookie to this level of play, but has gone quietly unsung throughout his career so far within Tier 3 and Grassroots, and has a chance to make waves surrounded by more experienced peers, which should help build confidence. Patix went furthest in East playoffs on a previous version of Diamant a couple of years ago, and has since moved from team to team, playing in DAC and Portugal. He's one of the most vocal parts to this project, and you can see the reasoning of him taking ownership behind it. Everyone here wants to succeed, and sometimes building the best team you can, rather than chasing better offers, will get you further. Concerns for this team do then arise, coming from the fact that they've not stopped since the East Open qualifier at the start of this month, and balancing quality practice and review with officials is especially difficult without the security of an organisation or contract. That's the double-edged sword. Regardless, I think that they will perform well and do a decent job for themselves. Enterprise are one of only 3 rosters internationally with multiple Champions winners, and the only one in Challengers at the moment. They're an instant fan favourite and the obvious choice for an immediate title contender. Killers and Zeke are joining up for the first time since their win in Berlin back in 2021, but both have won Challenger Leagues in Spain and East respectively since then. Starkey and Jazz were both at Ascension last year, excelling in their own roles throughout domestic play, but not having the highlight performances that we would have hoped of them on the bigger stage. Jazz was unfortunate to disconnect in a key round against his now teammate, which culminated in the end of JobLife's run, but is one that he'll be hoping to forget and put behind him with the matches coming up this year. The one player I'm yet to mention is Doma, someone who I'm most curious to see play, as we've seen glimpses of him on a few different teams, but it started to feel like he was becoming a streets won't forget player rather than a talent of current times. His breakout was with the original Fnatic team of 2021, but he had several issues that held him back in the environment that a player like Boaster and coach like Mini demands of their players. At only 21 years old though, he has so much ahead of his playing career for someone who had been to India and back. This is the big opportunity that he'll have been waiting for since signing for Mad Lions those many moons ago. Regardless of the outcome, Challengers EMEA is the goal, and as the year continues, Ascension, an event which historically lots of these players will be looking to put right. Enterprise are the go-to candidate for making one of those spots right now and have to be considered a top team. Most people who watch these videos aren't subscribed to my channel, and we're now closing in on 1K, so make sure to subscribe, turn on notifications, and keep yourself updated about what's going on in Valorant within EMEA and beyond. Back to the video. ESC Gaming are the oldest organisation in the league, with the first records of their creation dating back as far as 2007, which is before the youngest player in the league, Metizport Shinnok, was even bloody born. This team has changed a lot over the years, naturally, and the Nightshare and Lovejix were part of the VCL Rejects team, which dumped them out of the last East Promotion Cup. But, as you all know, the saying goes, if you can't beat them, sign them, and even the core of that roster has changed, but arguably for the better now. Russ is another Valorant veteran in every sense, part of the supermassive team which made global event Masters Berlin, but has since spent the last 4 splits in Turkey with S2G, his highest point being the grand final of Ascension play-ins, but no further since. This will be his first English-speaking roster since Giants, where he teamed with the new league opponent Killers. Beast Mode is another journeyman of Challengers who spent most of his time in DAC. However, he was a 6th man for the Ascend team which made top 3 in Ascension back in 2023. But speaking of journeys, no man has been round half the globe before ending up back here in North again. He tried IGL and Flex, but Duelist is where his heart has lied since we first saw him outside of Hong Kong with Control back in the Beacon era. It is the role which took him to the CN Ascension Grand Final with Rare Atom last year, despite the fact that he couldn't close the deal with VCT. This roster has come together from so many different places, and the background of these players could not be more different. But I have good feelings about how they will perform, and if No Man can gain some early confidence, I can see him shooting them into playoffs. EXO Clan keeping themselves in the space is a huge positive for the ecosystem in Northeast, and they've built a competitive roster to back up their time spent. Former SweetNSour captain Batty helped them on their course through Eclipse, and now they have another high-profile in-game leader on their books with JJ. This might be the signing of the stage if it pays off. He had a huge off-season at the end of 2022 if you cast your minds back to the first year of partnerships, leading a promising Parlor esports team full of names which never hit their full potential, with Roxic being the closest of the lot joining Na'Vi only this year. The Turkish League has always had huge issues with player transfers and internal politics, which raise huge questions from the outside, and this only hindered his progression with Fireflux once the organisations merged. Now he's been presented with a fresh opportunity on his first fully English-speaking roster outside of Turkey. Luki and Luca are another dynamic duo of UK talent which, if tutored correctly, should be at the very forefront of the new top prospects in our region. Luca already proved that he could cut it at Challengers level with the thankless task of standing in for a rebuilt Metizport at the end of last year. Soren has always been plagued with rosters collapsing around him, and was hard done by the exclusion of his previous team Requiem from this year of competition. However, his innate ability to qualify to this level of play on almost any roster just proves he deserves the call-up every single time. ESO is the one player on this team which, on paper, doesn't speak for himself, but when you look at his contributions to their qualification, specifically in the most important match played against Coalesce, he definitely earned his spot. This team does feel like a longer term project for this year, also requiring more time to reach its full potential, having not spent as much time together as others within the region, so I would place them right on the fringes of playoff qualification. FMG have maintained their investment into Tier 2 and been able to use this to their advantage, securing the services of a few notable names in Vubit, Maximin, and Coach Duelist pairing from Apina, Kaisago and Kalkuna. This roster has plenty of familiar names for those who have been watching North for the last 2 splits. Puggy has been given continued trust to lead this team once again, a role which he's held since the end of 2022, which feels like a long time ago now since the Beacon watch parties of old. At their highest point, Formulation were the first team to take a map from Apex, a feat which they were nearly able to repeat in the same series, but ultimately couldn't finish it off. I think this sums up their performance as a whole. This is a team which is often remembered for the what-ifs and will be hoping to change that this year. It's another lineup which brings me more concerns than settles doubts in my mind, unfortunately. Kalkuna is an amazing duelist player and was arguably within the top 4 regionally last year. Vubit was another player who had electricity about his game, but taking the offer to be 6th man for Ascend took away valuable game time to build on what he had started. If the Finnish duo can pick up some steam, this will be a serious comeback arc for them, and it's something I would love to see, but there's a lot going on under the hood which needs to be figured out first to ensure the long-term results that they desperately crave for. HAVU have the joint most rookies at this level of play, which creates a lot of unpredictability about this team. Nixun is the most capable Finnish in-game leader on the market at the moment, and if HAVU have long-term ambitions in both their local scene and wider space, he's definitely the man for the job. He has previous playing experience in East with Anorthosis Famagusta, the original Go Next Esports, don't ask me to say that one again, but his magnum opus will be only Finns in North, and always will. An entirely Finnish-speaking roster which has housed over a dozen different players with experience ranging from grassroots to VCT. There has never been such a thing as a bad hand for Nixun. As long as they speak his language, he has found a way to generate results greater than the sum of his parts. Previous teammates opted not to reunite with him for 2025 over the incentives of other offers. However, Phobia does make his glorious return as coaching staff, someone who's always provided insight and made use of statistics to enhance their performance. There is little information on the new pickups, but I am reliably informed that both Eagle and Nausea are capable to flex onto other roles, so there are options in how HAVU want to set themselves up for this stage. This roster and its expectations are ultimately built on the good faith of Nixun and his track record. However, I expect that they will struggle to win more than a couple of matches at this level, hence my placement. Metizport's first entry to North was the result of a forfeit from previous league members as they failed to qualify through Beacon, the VRC at the time. This started a butterfly effect which contributed to their current invitation, giving them another chance to win it all this year. Being one of several rosters currently without a coach, Cider has hand-selected several players to accompany him on what could be his last year as a player in the scene, depending on the outcome. He has already given lots of praise to Burzy and Anguist, noting that they had big offers but were hungry to win and felt this team was the right fit for them instead. Both players during the off-season were trialled by VCT teams but weren't selected as they were deemed unready to make the jump. Under that context, Metizport this year feels like the perfect team for several players, both Shinnok and Jusu included, to show their capability and springboard themselves to new heights. The promise of Challengers EMEA inter-regional competition only makes this more tempting, as none of these players have been to those events, with the exception of Anguist's Ascension run last year, despite the plaudits they have consistently received so far in their careers. This roster, in many ways then, feels like a now or never for Cider to achieve what he set out for many years ago, and has all of the tools at his disposal to do so. Swiss could still be a bumpy road, but this team should be one of the first choices for playoffs and will be aiming for the mountain's peak throughout this year. NOM is the only organisation to have played in East Surge since it was known as part of the VRL system. They are the longest standing league member but have failed to eclipse their highest standing of 3rd in 2022. NOM have a couple of returning players from their last Challengers campaign in Nero and Rare, but for the most part this is a brand new version of the team. Bravo and Amkar are both pickups who have plied their trade in North for the previous stage, with the Hungarian being an active component of the Coalesce Eclipse roster which qualified to the lowest Swiss stage in November last year. Razis has also been super hit or miss in terms of performances, but if he's feeling confident, he does look unstoppable, and that reason puts him as my one to watch for this team, and if they're to succeed, I would expect him to be a major part of it. NOM are a team which always bring decent rosters to the table and have stronger performances at the start of the split. However, this lineup does feel somewhat uninspiring to me overall. In recent years, they've struggled to finish any higher than 7th, but this time with the league's expansion, I still don't have them making that playoff stage which has eluded them for the last 3 years. NXT have been consistently underrated for the last 2 events. They also started 2-0 in the Swiss stage of the previous Eclipse promotional tournament, but unlike last time, they didn't fail to convert from this position. This unbeaten run delivered on the promise of results that the core of Bark, Mali and Avi have given serious credibility to. The latter 2 players won Epic 42 together during the summer, which is a big local LAN event in the UK. This was against EXO Clan's previous roster, still featuring Lukey and, at the time, current 100 Thieves assistant coach Rudy. While they have been highlighted by most in the scene as players to watch, I'm also interested in the new inclusions of Laser and Akira, which have seemed to have galvanised the squad. Akira made a deep run in 2024 with Pedro, the Portuguese Challenger League runners-up. Oh god, what a tongue twister. And brings a new sense of direction and leadership to the group. Laser, on the other hand, is a player who started their career in the original East qualifiers, but has since found his roots again in the Norwegian national leagues and played exclusively Yoru for NXT in Lower Swiss. For all intents and purposes, he does seem to be a flex player rather than a one-trick, but this will certainly add a dynamic to the team, which could be really fun seeing what they run and how they fare against more established teams, which already have a lot to do to try and figure them out. This roster does feel more like one for the future, and the organisation have already shown they're willing to keep investing in this core and within the space as a whole. Less orange bikinis on Twitter and more results, please. I think NXT might just have enough to make the top cut for Upper Swiss, but we'll have to find out. Pixel Lumina is a new name in the space, but behind that veil lies the old guard of East, combining a really solid Polish core with some additional Hungarian firepower. They have the highest average age of all the teams playing in both the Upper and Lower Swiss at 24 years old, which reminds me that I'm actually old now too. VCT has created a mix of players that just makes sense, and actually has me excited for what they can achieve as a group. He had pretty smart calling in the Lower Swiss stage, and I was impressed with how he dictated the pace of quite a lot of their attacking rounds. Almo and Styx are both underrated Polish players who I was surprised not to see land on a big roster coming into the year. Someone who has traded the high life for this team though is Maniac, the star-studded duelist who carved his name into Catalan folklore by winning the second split of Challengers Spain with Barcelona last year. It's strange not seeing him be the main duelist in this team, but with how proficient his operator can be, he makes a great second option on maps where they can also use a chamber, for example. The man he makes way for is simply put, his duelist was exceptional in Lower Swiss. A better raise pick, in my opinion, and one which gives more variety to comps and map pool for them. It's a strong blend of experienced players which should be aiming for the top half and a spot in playoffs, although a place in their first Challengers EMEA tournament may be out of reach for them right now. 2 second place finishes in North for SweetNSour puts them highest of all the returning teams in the region for this stage. However, a completely different core with only Affen retained when he didn't start the majority of their second split or Ascension's play-ins run does raise some question marks about the new identity of this team. He will continue to be the in-game leader, with the Anto supplementing the mid-round as he has done previously, but at this core, it's now a CIS team, made up of some really promising players, both old and new. The transfer which will draw most attention is Defo, Masters winner with Gambit in 2021, but most recently part of the Valiant team, which ended SNS's 24 campaign in the last chance group of play-ins. For those who hadn't played close attention to North last year, the introduction of Viti is huge. He played for most of 2024 with a Pinot Orchestre, the youngest roster in all of Challengers, and was a real highlight. Most of his time in the off-season was spent with EXO, but he was rumoured to have been trialled for a VCT Academy spot. SNS will get a lot from him in clutch positions, and that was already shown off in their lower run. Diseased is the final new addition and has experience on LAN from playing in China with ESC Gaming. He didn't have the craziest performances when they qualified, but has proven already to be quite a flexible player, which will be very useful to set up the rest of this squad. When it comes to SweetNSour, I have always failed to rate them highly enough. However, they should be fighting for a spot in the top 4 right out of the gate. They're known for strong starts with a dip in the middle, but this format will be a lot less forgiving than last year if they can't get the wins early. Szach Mat are a legacy team in East at this point, and finally got the checkmate that they deserve, which is what the roster means in English, as most of you will probably know. They've been battling in the VRC VALORANT East United for the last 2 years consistently, even taking wins over Trashcan and Incognito, some of the promoted teams, but never made the jump up to Challengers themselves. In many ways, they will be seen as the spiritual successor to these rosters now, and a magnet for fans of East grassroots to latch onto, with streamer Shaloni taking his spot on the team. They looked decent in the Lower Swiss with a 3-2 record, and did well to put away a fading Coalesce as the night grew longer. This is a team which already has their own Liquipedia page, unlike most other Orgless teams you will see, and that's mainly from the constant head slamming into C-tier events, which has accrued the necessary points. Szach Mat have not bent the knee when it comes to compositions, and play right on meta or close to it. Demek has been running Neon on a lot of maps and continues to do so even after the nerf. These players have enough experience to compete in the second tier, no doubt in my mind. It's been long enough. Seeing them climb much higher up the rankings like Trashcan did though is asking more than we can realistically expect from them. Liquid Academy are the only VCT Academy team in Northeast, which prevents them from relegation but doesn't guarantee they'll compete in Upper Swiss in the following stage. Cupid doesn't have his work cut out for him here, and it's not a job that most will envy, although he has acquired a lot of experience from the last few years. Many will know him from his time on the bench being an understudy at Cloud9. He spent the first half of 2024 at Digital Athletics before coming into an SK Gaming team to replace Batty, which then paused their efforts in VALORANT Challengers only a year after entering the circuit. This is another project which will be considered long-term, and the academy status of the roster signals this. Now that is something which Cupid has been without in his career so far, and the added stability and extra stage 3 should give him the confidence to build some momentum as the year goes on. This is the only academy in EMEA to not field a player from the same country of origin as its partner organisation, in this case the Netherlands. Koi Phoenix and Carmine Corps Blue Stars both have Spanish and French representation respectively. Where they lack Dutch players, they bring so much firepower to the server, with several Radiant Duelist mains that have hit over 1,000 RR in Ranked. However, I feel that the limitations of this squad will come through discipline, since there are likely to be several role changes, and it is a fresh environment for a lot of the players which will be adapting to the team. Unsigned are without an org, but carry a name which has been passed around and lived in the grassroots of EMEA for a long time. Ilio, their IGL, has a deep-rooted history with the UK scene, being a former player of Malik and Vexed Gaming as far back as 2021. From this, he's teamed up with Bully, the only player in this squad who returns to North for another year. When he joined Human Tripwires, it felt like they were moving towards bigger things, but couldn't reach playoffs, and in the off-season, he went his separate way. Bully plays best when fully isolated and has always been capable of manoeuvring his way out of difficult spots and should always be credited with strong individual performances which should contribute heavily to this team. With the years of experience Ilio brings from DAC, this has become a mostly German team featuring Appa, Darkwin and Dayten, who holds dual citizenship with Serbia, providing eligibility for the league. Darkwin was part of the Permitti Unicorn side which upset BBL Esports in a best of one during the off-season at Red Bull Homeground, but will be moving to Initiator on this roster rather than the Neon or Jet which he was originally named after. Appa has done a great job in his stead and will give the firepower needed to this team. Unsigned did well to record some clean 2-0s over weaker teams in Lower Swiss, but it's hard to say how they will do against quality teams, and for that reason, I don't want to rank them too highly during their first stay in Upper Swiss. WYLDE, WYLDE, WYLDE. The Irish organisation took a break from VALORANT in 2024, but returned to Challengers, and for the first time, it's in Northeast, their home region. Twice in the French League, we saw them nurture talents such as Kiko, Riens, and Hero, and coaches such as Bonkar and, of course, Pal. Their decision to stick to an Irish core is a bold one, but in the current year, after what SweetNSour achieved, it's as good a time as any. The question is, where are those players? Don't get me wrong, I'm excited to see where they go, and especially happy with the selection of Drog. But when Famzam and Tempo were also strong options, you wonder what fell through along the way. Looking at the team, roles aren't really nailed on until we see them play. Drog has played mainly Sentinel and some smokes, but is pretty flexible to move on to whatever. Merrick's played Duelist for RTCN in Eclipse, but played smokes previously. Frack was mainly a Duelist player from Ranked, with some Sage and Chamber, and Aiden, when searching for a team, was looking for offers with Duelist, Sentinel, and Flashes, so we'll have to wait and see. I would love to be surprised by this team, and I expect them to have a driven work ethic as this is what WYLDE attempt to promote for their players. But it's an uphill climb against the other quality in the division, so I struggle to see them go too far. Zero Tenacity have a long and complicated history with VALORANT, which threatened to end during the last off-season, but it's great to have them back. Doing away with their old core, we see new yet familiar faces with the inclusion of more historic East Surge players. Prutti and Grimek will continue their partnership which has spanned from roster to roster, leading them to play-ins last year with Diamant. Tyrex made a strong late run in 2024 with Trashcan, and Mush saw his own success with Szach Mat in the off-season. But the player who went a step further than the rest and will be backing himself to do it again this year is Alexic. He reached Ascension with Go Next, the East representative for last year, although it was a group stage exit he will want to forget as soon as possible. Lots of the blame for their defeat was placed on himself by his own two shoulders, and it's something which you could have seen coming. Alexic is a player who has been lights out at times, dominating the server and pulling off wild plays. One thing he has struggled with though is consistency and keeping first deaths to a minimum to make total use for his team. In many ways, the pressure is off for these guys coming into Swiss, and for those exact reasons, I expect them to do well starting this year. It is a long campaign though, and with pressure building, that's where I want to put them under more scrutiny, as this is a team which should be held to higher standards based off of their collective experience. And that's it. Thank you so much for watching my VALORANT Challengers Northeast team report. This is a video which took several days' work, researching, editing, and putting everything together, recording from dawn till dusk. I've put a lot of effort into this one, and I hope that that's reflected in the video for you all, and that you learn a little bit more about at least one of the teams. Maybe you don't agree with my opinion or my placement of any of them, but that's what this is all about. It's up for debate. Northeast is going to be starting very, very soon, and as one of the commentators of the league, I hope that you all join me on this journey to watch the teams throughout the year and celebrate them in Challengers EMEA as well. I've been HazzaJC. Thank you so much once again for watching. Like and subscribe if you haven't already. And with that in mind, goodbye for now.